What is the best camera for vlogging and making YouTube videos? In this video, I'm going to show you 4 different cameras that are ideal for beginners, or those of you who want a compact, easy-to-use camera. I'll go over what makes each camera so special and why it might be right for you, and include lots of sample footage. In this video, I'll be evaluating each of these compact cameras on 7 key features, including price, image quality, zoom range and bokeh, stabilization, low light shooting, audio quality, and overall usability and impressions, because each camera looks extremely different and has certain things that it does better than the others. As always, there will be plenty of sample footage from each camera throughout this video, and there are links below if you want to learn more about each camera. If you're new here, my name is Susie, and I do reviews and tutorials about compact camera gear for vlogging and travel videos. Now, before we dive in, I want to clarify that this video is not sponsored. I have in-depth video reviews of each camera, so if you enjoy this video and you want to support the channel, please consider watching those other videos or using my affiliate links below for your next purchase. The first contender on the list is the iPhone 14 Pro, which came out in September 2022 and is updated every single fall. Next up is the GoPro Hero 11 Black, which also came out in September 2022 and is updated every single fall as well. Next up is the DJI Pocket 2, which came out in fall 2020 and as of right now, June 2023, does not yet have a successor. And the final camera we have is the Sony ZV-1 Mark II, which is the newest camera of the bunch. It replaces the original Sony ZV-1 and it came out in summer of 2023. So why did I choose these 4 cameras? Well, they all have high shooting specs, are pocket-sized and easy to use. You can use them straight out of the box without needing to buy additional lenses or accessories. And each camera is relatively affordable, costing under $1,000 US. Next, let's set the stage with pricing from highest to lowest. The most expensive camera here is the iPhone. The pricing is a sliding scale depending on the model and how much built-in storage you want. The iPhone 14 is $800 for the least amount of storage, but you only get 2 lenses with that phone. So I personally prefer the iPhone 14 Pro, which comes with 3 lenses and is $1,000 for the least amount of storage. Next is the Sony ZV-1 Mark II, which is going for $900 US. Now, the original Sony ZV-1 is slightly cheaper at $700, but you can get used versions of it for about $500, which brings us up to par with the GoPro Hero 11 Black. Now, when it first came out, it was $500, but now, a few months later, it's gone down to $450 or $400 if you get it with a $50 a year GoPro subscription. There's also the GoPro Hero 11 Mini, which is slightly cheaper, but it is lacking a proper display screen for seeing your footage, and you can't attach an external microphone, so I can't really recommend that camera for vlogging. And finally, we have the DJI Pocket 2. This camera is only $350, but if you do want the combination with the wireless microphone, more on that later, it's $500. Now, starting with image quality, all of these cameras on the list can shoot at least 4K video and both RAW and JPEG photos. However, the GoPro Hero 11 Black leads the pack with its ability to shoot at up to 5.3K 60 frames per second regular video, as well as 4K 120 frames per second slow motion and 2.7K 240 frames per second super slow motion, making it the only camera here that can shoot at those video resolutions. The GoPro is also one of 2 cameras on this list that can shoot in 10-bit. However, it does lack an HDR video mode, which is present on 2 other cameras here. When it comes to image quality specific to vlogging, I've always liked the way the GoPro makes my face look, especially if sharpness is on low. And in terms of still photos, the GoPro can shoot 27 megapixel stills, but other cameras can actually shoot better photos with their other features. The iPhone 14 Pro takes second place for image quality, with its ability to shoot at 4K 30 frames per second in ProRes, which gives you the highest image quality video, and it can also shoot in 10-bit. It can also shoot in 4K 60 frames per second regular video or 4K 60 HDR video. Additionally, it can do a cinematic mode with a blurred out background in 4K 30 frames per second and slow-mo at 1080p 120 frames or 240 frames per second. In terms of vlogging quality, I think it makes makes me look pretty good, but at times it can show a little too much detail on my face, which my fellow female vloggers out there may agree with me that it's not preferable. It can shoot still photos as high as 48 megapixels with the main camera lens, or 12 megapixels with the ultra-wide and telephoto lenses. The DJI Pocket 2 comes in third for image quality, with its maximum video shooting at 4K 60 frames per second, and slow-mo at 1080p 120 frames or 240 frames per second. It also has an HDR video shooting mode, but it is capped at 2.7K at 30 frames per second, and there is no 10-bit video option. The camera produces the highest detail, but again, it may be a little too much for vlogging, but it can shoot still photos as big as 64 megapixels, making it the largest photo size among these cameras. And lastly, the Sony ZV-1 Mark II has the lowest resolution of up to 4K 30 frames per second regular video, or 1080p at 120 frames or 100 frames per second. It's almost the exact same resolution as the original Sony ZV-1, but the Mark II does have slightly better slow-mo quality. It does have a few handy features for vlogging. There's product showcase mode, which focuses on a product if you ever bring it up to the lens. There's also a button that will give you bokeh or blurred out background at the touch of the button, and skin smoothing, which again might be desirable for some users out there. But on the downside, the Sony ZV-1s both lack HDR video mode and 10-bit video support, but both can shoot 20 megapixel still photos. And they also have the fastest and most accurate autofocus for humans, animals, and objects, and can shoot 24 frames per second still photos. So basically it's a really good photography camera in addition to a video camera. So if you need the highest video resolution, then the GoPro or the iPhone are your top choices. But just keep in mind that high resolution means more file storage. I personally shoot a majority of my videos in 4K 30 frames per second. Now let's discuss the field of view for each of these cameras, since they all come with built-in lenses. The GoPro has the widest field of view of all of these cameras, with the Hero 11 Black having an insanely wide 113 field of view thanks to HyperView. However, this wide FOV can result in a lot of side distortion, which is that GoPro look that some people don't like. Now, as of the Hero 8 and later models, including the Hero 11, they all have linear shooting mode that corrects for distortion and provides a more normal looking lens. However, zooming in with a GoPro can be quite a challenge. Now, while shooting in 5K allows you to crop in post-production, there isn't a zoom toggle on the camera aside from going into linear mode. Additionally, GoPros are not great for macro or close-up shooting, and there's no option for achieving bokeh or that blurred out background in your shots. Now the iPhone has the next widest lens with an ultra-wide 12mm lens offering a 120-degree FOV, or a 24mm lens with the main camera. It also has a 2x and 3x zoom, which is equivalent to about 48mm and 77mm, and you can even use digital zoom on top of that. But it is important to note that if you do use digital zoom, your image quality is going to degrade quite a bit. Now the iPhone can also capture a respectable macro or close-up shot, and the portrait mode for stills and cinematic mode produces pretty decent bokeh effects. The DJI Pocket 2 has a 93-degree FOV, which is about a 20mm equivalent lens, which is respectable, but users can also purchase a wide-angle lens adapter for an additional $50 to achieve a 110-degree or 15mm FOV. The Pocket 2 can also zoom in about 8 times and has decent macro capabilities. Bokeh effects are also possible. And finally, the Sony ZV-1 Mark II has a built-in 18 to 50mm f1.8 to f4 lens, which is wider than the original ZV-1, which has about a 24 to 70mm lens. Now the trick is, if you have built-in stabilization enabled, which you always should if you're going to be walking and filming, that does crop in a bit for the ZV-1 and actually all of these cameras here. But for most people, myself included, I think it's wide enough for vlogging and content creation. And there are even wide-angle adapters for the original Sony ZV-1 to make it even wider, so there's probably going to be similar adapters available for the ZV-1 Mark II. The ZV-1s also offer really great zoom range that retains image quality thanks to Clear Image Zoom, which offers even more zoom on top of the advertised focal length. Now both ZV-1s have macro modes for shooting close-up detailed shots, and they both have that dedicated bokeh button to blur out your background. And it works really well for both products and for people. Now, each of these compact cameras has some form of built-in image stabilization, so you don't really need a gimbal or a separate stabilizer. But gimbals do offer other benefits besides stabilization, and I have another video talking all about why you might need a gimbal. So check out that video below if you want to learn more. Now, when it comes to built-in stabilization, GoPro by far leads the way with its 5th generation hypersmooth electronic stabilization, and horizon leveling on top of that, which can keep your videos very even. Now, the Hero 11 Black can also produce really stable footage when you're walking, running, and even sprinting while still holding the camera handheld. Now, for the iPhone 14 Pro, it also has pretty good stabilization, especially if you're shooting an ultra-wide with its sensor shift optical image stabilization. Now, if you switch over to active mode, which is brand new in the iPhone 14, you get even better stabilization that rivals the GoPro's Hypersmooth. However, active mode is currently capped at 2.8K resolution, and it lacks horizon leveling, so it can be pretty tough to keep that video level. The DJI Pocket 2 is the only camera here that comes with a built-in physical gimbal that gives you 3-axis stabilization. But in my opinion, Hypersmooth and active mode on the other cameras produce more stable footage. And that's mainly because gimbals can give you a slight bobbing effect when you're walking or running, which is less noticeable on cameras that don't use gimbals. And finally, the Sony ZV-1 Mark II and the Mark I both have electronic stabilization called Steady Shot. However, Steady Shot still is not as effective as stabilization on the other cameras on this list. So if you use a tripod or you shoot stationary footage, then stabilization may not be a big deal to you. But if you plan to walk with this camera, then you might want to consider getting a gimbal to improve the stabilization. Since these are all compact cameras, they don't have the biggest sensors, so they aren't really optimal for shooting in low light. But here's how they look. Now, this was shot during blue hour, so about an hour after sunset. And in my opinion, GoPro cameras definitely perform the worst in terms of exposure and brightness of the image. Now, the iPhone 14 Pro looks way better in low light in terms of exposure and even stabilization. But I will say that the DJI does look pretty stable thanks to that built-in gimbal. The footage is a bit grainy as to be expected, but I think it's pretty acceptable. Like, I would use this in a vlog if I really had to. Now, finally, the ZV-1 Mark II and the Mark I footage look pretty identical in my testing, and they both do extremely well in terms of image brightness and exposure. But where the Sonys fail is in stabilization. Even with Steady Shot on, they look pretty shaky. So you definitely need to use a gimbal when shooting in low light with this camera. When it comes to audio, all 4 cameras have built-in microphones that produce pretty decent quality audio, as long as you're close to the camera. However, they also offer options to add your own external microphones, which can greatly enhance your audio quality. Starting with the ZV-1 Mark II and the Mark I, both have built-in mics that come with a furry windscreen, making them perfect for outdoor shooting. The original ZV-1 mic is directional, while the ZV-1 Mark II now has a multi-direction mic, so you can actually set it to front or rear sensitivity, or set it to all directions or auto. The built-in mics do pretty well, especially in windy conditions. This is a sound test with the Sony ZV-1 Mark II using the built-in multi-directional microphone with the furry windscreen on top. But the sound quality is a bit tinny, so I do recommend using an external microphone if you can. Now, both cameras have multifunctional hot shoe mounts on top and a 3.5mm microphone jack, so you can easily add your own mic without having to purchase an extra adapter or a cage. The iPhone 14 Pro also has a pretty good built-in mic, which is ideal for capturing audio when you're on the go. And this is a sound test with the iPhone 14 Pro using the built-in internal microphones. This is what it sounds like. However, it's really not great in windy conditions. So I'd recommend using an external microphone if you're going to be shooting outdoors with the iPhone. There are many microphones made specifically for phones with lightning connectors that can easily be plugged into the bottom of the phone. Next, the DJI Pocket 2 has 4 built-in mics that produce pretty decent audio. This is a sound test with the DJI Pocket 2 using the built-in internal microphones. However, if you pay a little bit extra to get the Creator Combo, that includes a microphone adapter and a wireless mic that significantly improve the audio quality. This is a sound test with the DJI Pocket 2 and the wireless microphone. Finally, the GoPro Hero 11 Black has pretty decent audio straight out of camera. This is a sound test with the GoPro Hero 11 Black using the built-in microphones with the wind reduction set to auto. The Media Mod, which is sold separately, has a built-in microphone that enhances the audio, and it also has a 3.5mm microphone jack to attach your own external microphone. It should also be noted that if you want to add your external mic, you have to get an adapter for the GoPro. Now in this last section, we'll explore the usability of each camera and my overall impressions of them for vlogging and content creation. Starting with the Sony ZV-1 Mark II and the Mark I, I really like them for their ergonomic point-and-shoot form factors that make it super easy to shoot from behind or in front of the camera. These cameras have the biggest flip-out LCD screens, and they also offer the most flexibility for connecting an external microphone. They also have flexible zoom ranges, an easy-to-use bokeh button, a skin smoothing option, and it's easy to film vertical videos. These Sonys are also really great hybrid cameras because they take really great videos and photos. These cameras also have a lot of advanced features, such as built-in ND filters and the ability to shoot in S-Log or manual mode. If you don't know what those things are, then no worries, because they are geared towards professionals. But the point is that if you really want to grow with a camera and learn what those features are and how to use them, then you can do that with the Sonys. The main downsides to the Sonys is that there's no super wide-angle lens, there's pretty poor image stabilization, it's not very weatherproof, and it has the lowest battery life of 45 minutes, although you can swap out the battery if you need to. Now the DJI Pocket 2 is a great option for vloggers who want a super stealth camera. Most people will have no idea that you're even filming with it. It also is the only camera here with a built-in gimbal, which lets you do things like motion time lapses and stable shooting in low light without the need to purchase an additional gimbal. Although it has a built-in battery that can't be swapped out, it does last for 2.5 hours, which is quite a bit longer than the Sony or the GoPro. However, the picture quality can be a little too detailed for faces, it's not the most weatherproofed camera, and the handle needs to be held sideways if you want to shoot vertical videos. Now for the GoPro. It is first and foremost a rugged waterproof action camera, so if you need to use it in extreme conditions or while filming action, it's your best bet. But I personally have been using GoPro as an everyday vlogging camera for almost 5 years now, and I'm pretty happy with the results. The built-in stabilization is the best out of any of these cameras, and it also offers the widest field of view and the highest resolution video. It's also ideal for shooting vertical video because, number one, you can flip it sideways to film vertical, or you can shoot an 8:7 aspect ratio, which lets you crop your video horizontally or vertically in post-production. Another key benefit about the Hero 11 is that it now comes with auto upload, which automatically backs up your videos to the GoPro Cloud, which does cost an additional $50 a year, but it includes unlimited cloud storage at 100% quality. Do you know how hard it is to find affordable unlimited cloud storage? Now, I've mentioned in my past videos that GoPros have had serious bug issues, like freezing and losing footage, but this is the first GoPro that I've used since the Hero 7 that has not had any of those issues in the last 8 months that I've been using it. But for downsides, GoPro performed the worst in our low light test, and it's not ideal for shooting zoom, close-up macros, or shots with bokeh or that blurred out background. And if you want to improve the sound by attaching your own external microphone, then you have to buy the Media Mod, which is pretty dated and in need of a redesign. GoPro battery life also isn't ideal. It lasts about an hour in normal shooting conditions, but you can swap out the battery for a fresh one. And finally, let's talk about the iPhone. So I just switched over to iPhone from Android at the beginning of this year. And despite being relatively new to it, I am thoroughly impressed with the iPhone's camera capabilities. I often use it to shoot B-roll for these tech videos and also my travel videos, since it's a camera that I always have with me. This is the biggest strength of using an iPhone for vlogging, and everyone now has phones and uses them for FaceTime or video chat, so you won't look very strange if you're filming yourself with your phone. Moreover, the iPhone's camera specifications keep improving, making it even better for video production. It can shoot 4K 60 with the front or back cameras, has multiple lenses for ultra-wide or telephoto shots, and can also shoot cinematic video with bokeh. And the iPhone 14s now have action mode with stabilization that competes with action cameras. Also, the iPhone is water resistant, making it less of a disaster if you accidentally drop it into water. It's the best camera here for shooting vertical videos, and it also has the best battery life, lasting up to 16 hours. However, once the battery is drained, you can't replace it, so you have to stop and charge. Also on the downside, the iPhone's storage is not expandable, unlike the other cameras on this list, which all support memory cards. The iPhone 14 Pro is also the most expensive camera here, starting at $1,000 with the least amount of storage, and the price actually increasing as you add storage. It's also the heaviest and largest camera, making it a little cumbersome to hold for extended periods of time. And lastly, the iPhone is not just a camera, it's a communication device and a lot more. As a result, if it's lost or stolen, it's a much bigger deal than if a standalone camera goes missing. So overall, each camera here has its own strengths and weaknesses. So the best choice for vlogging really depends on your image style and your budget. Now personally, I use a combination of cameras because there's not just one here that meets all of my needs. And it's always best to have two cameras just in case something happens to one of them. I use the GoPro as my primary vlogging camera because I need the best stabilization without a gimbal for doing my walking and talking shots. And I also use an iPhone for supplementary shots whenever I need zoom, macro, bokeh, or low light shots. Basically anything the GoPro can't do, I can generally do it with my iPhone. However, you personally might prefer the Sony ZV-1 Mark II or the Mark I if you want a traditional point-and-shoot style hybrid camera that's really great at also taking still photos. Or the DJI Pocket 2 if you want all of the built-in gimbal benefits. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Which of these cameras, if any, would you use for your vlogging and content creation? Let me know in the comments. And also leave me any questions. And as always, when in doubt, just shoot it.